action.
My name is Benaya, and this podcast is called Hey, What Did I Miss? In episode, this is Women's History Month. So there's going to be a set of students talking about how they appreciate women and their opinions on women and like how women are valued. And I'm the one that came up with this episode.
All right, welcome to our special guest for women's empowerment is Dr. Blanca Ruiz. She's an ed consultant and former principal. Blanca is a District 13 Fort Greene product, Brooklyn, do or die. Somewhere I hear Biggie playing in the background. In all seriousness, I appreciate her taking the time to share her story without hesitation. As Dr. Ruiz would put it, she's got a story to tell. If you know, you know. Doom, 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 doom. You know that Biggie song. Let's hear what she has to say.
So I am Blanca. I was born, I identify as a New Yorican, a Puerto Rican from New York, Boricua. So my peoples are from Moca, Puerto Rico, but we are very much Brooklyn, Fort Greene. So grew up on, my mom and family grew up mostly on Bergen side. And I grew up on Carlton and Atlantic and the Two Tones projects over there. One of five. So I am the youngest of five kids. I have four older brothers and I'm the youngest girl. So I feel like I've been fighting all my life. And I went to public school, K to 8. I went to PS 11. So for those of you who know PS 11, I went to PS 11 and then I went to 113, which was right where the former Arts and Letters is. Adelphi and for junior high school. And then I got a scholarship through an Oliver program to go to private school. And so I went to private school, downtown Brooklyn. And I tell everyone I went, back in the days, Fort Greene was predominantly Black and Latino. I went to school with predominantly Black and Latino people. And then I ended up going to Packer. And that's when I realized, oh, snap, there's people that don't look like me. They're people with money. And so I spent my 4 years at Packer navigating life. And then I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. So I went to DC because I was like, oh, let me go to school in DC because that's where all lawyers hang out.
Georgetown. Yeah, over there.
Georgetown.
Yeah, see? I said Georgetown.
I was a Hoya and graduated from there really wanting to teach and then spent the rest of my life teaching and working in schools, particularly with middle school kids who I have a love relationship with.
That's extra love for listen. That's an extra love relationship. Yes, ma'am.
So middle school. So I taught. I was a principal, and now I do ed consulting. And I have two children who are very unapologetic about their presence, but also teach me to be better about things. So I do a lot of, and then just what I currently do is a lot of racial justice and anti-oppression work to get, folks really thinking about how we see people of different races and how we interact with one another and how history has a play in that. So
here I asked Blanca about her earlier days of middle school.
So when we were in middle school, I was at 113. That's what, it was 7th and 8th grade only. So, from K to 6, I was in one building and then went to 7th and 8th grade. So it was just 2 years and you had 2 years to make impressions. But I was I love school. So I was one of those like quote unquote nerds. But I was kind of a cool nerd. So I don't know if anybody out there really identifies with that, where it's just like, I like my books and reading. And partially because I really thought this was the ticket, right? My mother was like, you got to go to school. My mother was known for like sending us to school when it was a blizzard and school was closed. She's like, no, we're going, because we didn't have like Twitter, social media, and all the things that now we currently have. So you have to figure it out a certain way. And so I really actually love school. But found myself trying to figure out which circle I fit into. And so the hardest thing for me was feeling like I had to fit into one of the circles. And so I really love school, but I think I was cool, but I also was like sporty and liked running and like track. So like there were different pockets of people. And I thought like I did the dance pretty well where I could go from circle to circle, but that didn't always jive well with everyone else. It was just like, well, why are you always hanging out with them? Why are you always hanging out with them? And it always made me feel like I had to pick. And then it was just, at some point I embraced that being smart was fine. Doing well in school was fine. Like, it's not a bad thing to actually do well. So I stopped hiding that. At first I used to like hide my scores when the teachers would like, give us our test back. When I wanted to see. But I think it was a time for me to figure out social circles, and like who I was cool with and who wasn't. Some people were sometimey, and some people got upset about that. And so it was a challenge but then I have my like ride or die people who, it doesn't matter which circle you're in. You're like, those are my people. And we didn't need to hang out every time. So, and they understood that. So I think that was like middle school navigation.
I then asked the good doctor about the importance of perseverance. I could tell this was a complex topic to cover, so many layers. But let's hear what she has to say.
So I have a very complex relationship with perseverance and resilience and those words.
Talk about it. Come on now.
I will. That's the story, right?
Yeah.
Growing up, I grew up so the other thing is that I grew up Catholic. And so every Sunday we were at church. I did all the sacraments. So if anyone has grown up Catholic, you might know like about baptism, communion and confirmation. I did all of those steps. But my mother was big into prayer, and she would always talk about fortaleza, fortitude. And so like basically like strength. I always say my people are strong people. We are resilient people. We are persevering people. And, there's more to the story than, I grew up, my mother raised us. My father was in and out of our lives. We grew up in poverty, but we didn't know, right? Like I didn't know until I went to Packer. So perseverance, my relationship with the word perseverance, part of me didn't know I had it during that middle school time because it just was the way. Like we had already persevered, right? And so over time, I felt the pressure as the youngest, as the one who really, I actually loved school. My brothers did not like school like that. So the one who loved school to really persevere, to like, you have to quote unquote make it. And so there was this sort of pressure on top of me loving school. There was this pressure to also do well so that it gives you some other opportunities. Perseverance got me through life stuff, like the stuff that no one sees when you walk into school, right? Like there's just stuff that's going on in your house that no one necessarily sees. And some of y'all may be going through some stuff that you're like, and your parents are like, don't go out there telling my business out in these streets, right? Some of y'all have some other stuff out, we're all going through COVID. So like, the pandemic is still here. We went through that. There's some of that's happening. And then when I think of perseverance within school, there was this incredible amount of pressure to do well, and that doing well was going to be a ticket to something. And so, like I think there was that academic perseverance on top of the social perseverance that I think is still actually the case. I don't know that I ever grew out of it. But also that my perseverance doesn't look like your perseverance, right? Like what I have to struggle through isn't like your struggle, right? And
right.
So I think one of the things that I didn't like about middle school, or that was hard, I shouldn't say didn't like, but one of the things is like there's this constant sort of competition. It's like, well, who's, more this, more that. And I was just like, I'm not gonna out battle you with like my pity story, right? Like I'm not gonna, like I don't
right.
So everyone has a threshold, and so your threshold is your threshold.
Right.
There are those that lean on others, maybe a parent or friend. Here we talk about how having a solid core is important.
I don't. So I'm an introvert, as much as people don't realize that, and I don't really go to people for things.
Mm-hmm.
I had like a core. That's what I say, and I said before. I had like people who understood, and I had a friend, Letitia Chalmers. I actually ran into her in Trader Joe's like 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Deborah, like we were all, and they were in totally different circles.
Mhm.
I also used to play an instrument then. So I forgot to add that part of my identity was I was a trumpet player.
Mhm.
Part of a jazz band and marching band.
No,
Um,
okay.
I know. See, y'all thought you
Mhm.
knew. Huh? I'll be dancing on the head and I'll be dancing on the trumpet. But so I had different, like I had those two, like I had two core people who
Mhm.
I knew, like I vibe with. And then I had, I didn't have any sisters growing up, but I have a niece who's 3 years younger than me who was like my sister. And
Mhm.
so those are like, that was it for me. It was, I've always been a small circle kind of person. I can be in company of a lot of people, but I leaned on those three people. My mom did not, she didn't know, I don't think she knew like what to do with a girl. So she had sons
Mm.
growing up and she figured out how to work with that. And she was like, so I didn't really always go to her for things, but she knew that things were going on, right? And so she knew what to ask. That's sort of the dynamic we had. But there was definitely like a core group of three people who I was like, I can go to you for this, I can go to you for this, and I can go to you for this. And there was one person in the school. At that point we had like coordinators that were like our AP, and she and I just talked a lot. And so she definitely would pull me aside and was like, hey, what's going on today? And so we would just chit chat occasionally, but the adult in the building was always helpful.
During a brief redirection, the subject of social media came up. She has an interesting take on it.
Boom.
This is the part where I aged myself. When I was a middle school principal, what did we have? MySpace was popping up. And so I was over it. I was
He's
so done.
Tom.
I was done. I was like, listen, y'all can't bring this outside stuff in here. Like what, so I am not a fan. I think social media provides opportunities to speak on platforms and bring awareness in its most positive state. It can bring awareness. It can connect people. It can let people know like, hey, I don't have the ability to reach out to everybody. But this is what I'm up to. That's the like most positive. In its most vicious state, which is what I think about, it is like, and also use it for like, oh, there are some ideas that are out there, like like you get to share some of your creativity and talent. In its most vicious state, and having dealt with it as an adult with students, it is like, it has been the idea that I would use it to tear someone down. Like I don't stand for that one-on-one. Like that's not what we're about. And so that I would put people down. I watch a lot of random reality TV. I'm not even gonna get into that. But I'm like, the kind of stuff people write about people's reality TV experience is pretty intense. And I'm like, why y'all being so mean to people? And so when people use it as a space to be mean, I'm not a fan of. When people use it as a cancel culture concept, I just don't agree with that. So I have mixed feelings about social media. I think it also can be a time suck. I'm like, put that down and read a book. Like that's actually a good use of time. But I'm also, but I think watching people do TikTok videos and trying to get some dance moves in, all right, that's gonna work for you, then okay, get some dance moves in. But yeah, so I have a complicated relationship with it. I think the popularity piece too, like that I am so concerned about what other people think of me. And so, that just,
Right.
and that I would resolve conflict on social media rather than have a conversation with someone.
Conversation.
That to me is like,
All the conversation is done. Yeah.
Blanca didn't want to answer this, and we all struggle with it. But what would we tell our younger selves? She was clearly ducking the question, though.
What would I don't know what I would tell my younger self. I think I think there is something around giving permission to explore the different sides of you and not being confined to how you are seen. And so I don't know if that makes sense to anyone.
Oh no, just keep going. Makes sense.
But that part of me was like, oh, this nerd personality, like what is that? Everyone might have had this perception of me. This part of me that I actually enjoyed watching. I don't like playing sports. I'm not a competitive person, and I'm competitive with myself. But like explore that side. Part of me was like, I'm really into playing an instrument. It's different. It's it's not. Well, my family didn't grow up like playing instruments. Explore that side. And so like they were just there. And then when I went to high school, I was, I didn't know my power, right? I didn't know. And so someone was like, you should run for student government. You should do, and I just didn't think about all the possibilities because I was too worried being the poor little Latina in a predominantly white, rich school, and trying to hide that other side. And so it wasn't until I became comfortable with all sides of me that, I consider it a beautiful mosaic, right? Like I am not defined by one piece of a puzzle or one piece of a picture. It is that all of these components make me, right? And so for every hardship that I've had in life, I very rarely I don't know that I have many regrets in life. The one regret is that I didn't study abroad in college. So that was my only regret. But I accept like some of that hardship, that the hard lessons as just part of what made me, right? Part of what led to the perseverance, part of what led to the resilience, part of what led to my sad moments, and part of what led to my triumphant moments, right? And so, and I think and part of it is natural. I think it's age appropriate to be like, I have to be this way. I have to be this way. And I'm grateful that I have, my kids teaching me that too, and trying to let them be who they are at this moment, at this slice of life. And I may not understand it because I don't understand y'all all the time. I didn't understand them all the time, but that they didn't have to be, robots. And my side
at this moment, we're talking about current work and side hustles.
Like I used to get to work at 6 a.m. and leave at 7 o'clock at night for 18 years. And that all sort of stopped when I decided to go and be an entrepreneur. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing some workshops. I do workshops a lot with teachers. I do workshops with parents. I do them with leaders, with school leaders, with organizations. And my daughter's favorite line is, I don't know why you're so busy and get all upset if you your own boss. So I guess I'm my own boss, y'all. So there's that, which is a whole different thing. Is that to me, I never dreamt it. I never wanted to do it. But here I am. I also have done a podcast with co-hosted it with Ray King, and we did a Woke at Work podcast, Women of Color at Work, where we really talk about the intersectionality of being a female and being a woman of color in various spaces. And what does that mean?
Then she had to give us her favorite vegan donut spot, Done Well Donuts.
We want to bless her with something. Bless me with a gift card to Done Well Donuts or some Done Well Donuts. It's on Montrose. It is I don't mess with that. Like, oh, it's good for being vegan. I'm like, no, it's just good. It tastes
good. Okay. All right.
Let's take a look inside to the power of networking.
What you know is important, but who you know is actually really important, and how you treat people. So I have former students who are like, Miss Ruiz, da-da-da-da. I'm like, you want a job? Oh, okay. You want a job after you decided. But see, I also think people have opportunity to change. So we just don't want to do that. But a lot of just what networking to me is not kissing up. Networking to me is not it's just that there are different people who are connected to something, who might know someone who might be like, oh, yo, do you know someone who ... fill in the blank. And so I used to tell my students this all the time. I'm like, listen, who you know and how you treat people is just as important as what you know. So
as an advertiser,
one of her favorite Biggie quotes. She went from ashy.
You can also say, I drop another one, and I take this from Biggie. I went from ashy to classy. Well, maybe not classy in appearance, but I've redefined classiness. So have other people. But there we go. So listen, we all can grow and transform.
Thank you to Dr. Ruiz for coming on the pod. She certainly is about evolution, changing perspectives, understands the power of networking, and most importantly, she went from ashy to classy, growing up in the same Brooklyn streets you're in now. What a way to start off our Women Empowerment series. Tune in as we have lots more headed your way. The new quote and mantra for you all: any and everything you do, do it with passion and grit. Find your passion and get to it. That's from A Coach Cam. Peace!